we're going to be allowing people to ask questions, but please post the questions in the IM window, and then I will take them on a case-by-case basis throughout the course of the webinar. During the next hour, we're actually going to be going through a quick crash course to all of SharePoint's most popular scenarios, allowing you guys to take advantage of it with a minimal amount of investment on your part. We're going to cover the best ways to produce and share content using SharePoint. We're going to discuss really how to leverage the deep collaboration that's part of the SharePoint platform. We'll also go into using SharePoint to allow you to discover information about people at your organization and information that's contained within your organization right now. And finally, we'll move to using SharePoint to build an even more robust platform for content, both externally and internally to your organization. So a lot of stuff to cover, only 1 hour, but again, if you guys have questions, pop them up throughout and we'll try and get to them. So let's start by talking about what SharePoint is. And I like to say SharePoint roughly falls into 4 different areas. It helps you produce content much more easily. It helps you collaborate, so making sure that you can work not only on an individual production basis, but also with groups of people or even your entire company, whether it's content, processes, or projects. It also allows you to discover information, as I mentioned earlier, finding a particular expert or the correct document or doing deep data analysis to really give you rich insights. It's much more robust than some of the other systems that are out there. And finally, actually doing a complete build process. SharePoint is great out of the box, but you can use it to build platforms for your entire organization that really lets you get even more features and functionality than simply leveraging the built-in capabilities. So we're going to be going over each of these sections through the course of today's webinar. What I'm going to be doing is showing a couple of slides very quickly and then diving directly into the demo. And when I do get into the demo, I encourage all of you to post questions in the session. I want this to be as interactive as possible. You are all currently on mute, so definitely throw in questions to the IM session, and I'll try and get to those as quickly as possible. So let's start with that first pillar, the pillar of producing content. And this is really what SharePoint is all about. It's about producing content and sharing it with others. And we're going to show you how you can do that out of the box. So one of the critical functions in SharePoint is the ability to use it to make yourself more productive. I know a lot of us do a lot of work on our own. We certainly all work within teams, but a lot of that work is frequently done on an individual basis. And one of the great features of the latest version of SharePoint is OneDrive for Business. It's a function that allows you to essentially work on your own, saving documents, storing documents on the local machine that you use every single day. The benefit is that that functionality that's enabled by OneDrive for Business takes that local document repository where you might have a Word document or a PowerPoint document and actually synchronizes it to a storage place within SharePoint itself. And that's a huge benefit to you for 2 reasons. The first reason is that you don't have to worry about the files being backed up. Simply by copying them into your OneDrive for Business folder share, they're automatically getting backed up into a SharePoint document location. The other critical feature is that enables a lot of additional functionality that's not currently possible in an existing file share or folder on your desktop. You can share it with other people simply by providing them a link rather than sending them the entire document. You can actually get versioning. So if you make a mistake or you want to go back to a revision that you had made the night before, it's very easily able for you to do that without having to go to an IT person to ask for that process. And you can also, when you're sharing it, actually choose which individuals actually have rights to it and get very granular on a document by document basis for that. The best part for me, though, is that it's very natural and intuitive to use. It's just a folder. You don't have to change the business process that you use right now. If you're used to storing everything in a huge, lump on your desktop, you can make a folder, point it to to OneDrive for Business and say this folder is going to be the folder where everything stored in there is automatically backed up. So it's very easy for those of us who are used to using file shares to get used to. And in fact, if you want to, you never even have to go into SharePoint to take advantage of those features. You can do all of that functionality out of the box just by leveraging the built-in file folder share to get into there. So let's take it a step beyond that. You know, you've got a good place that you've backed up your documents for. You're storing them either in your OneDrive for Business folder or in a SharePoint document library. What happens next? And the best part of making yourself more productive as a personal point is to make sure that you have access to the data that you need in real time. And that's a big deal. You can make very, very easy changes to your workflow to make sure that you can get that best benefit out of SharePoint. You don't have to learn to copy data up via an unusual manner. You can just drag and drop your content into a SharePoint document library. If you're wondering what specific files are, it actually includes document previews. So I know we've all been there before. We've got a folder that has 5 different copies of a Word document, and they all have similar sounding names. You can very easily go through and see those changes without having to actually open up the document itself. You can just use the preview functionality for that. And finally, you can edit and share documents with a single click. So rather than having to go through a lot of different programs to do that, SharePoint integrates natively with Outlook, with Word, with Excel to make sure that you can do your tasks without having to learn a new set of tools to be able to do that. So let's dive right into the demonstration. I'm going to go over what that looks like, and you guys can see what it looks like in action. So give me a second while I bring up the actual program we're going to be looking at. So I'm going to start with a look at where the documents are actually stored. So let's go ahead and bring this up right here. So what I'm bringing you to is a OneDrive for Business document location. I have this, I'm logged in as a fictional individual, Karen Berg. That doesn't actually look like me, of course. But this is Karen's OneDrive for Business site. She can use this to store all of the data that she deals with on a day-to-day basis. And you'll notice out of the box, it actually gives a couple of different locations for Karen to use. She can drag and drop information into this basic site, or she can drag it into the folder that's called Shared with Everyone. So you see out of the box, OneDrive for Business allows you to make that intelligent decision of how far and wide do you want to be sharing the content with others. If I'm working on something that's personal, let's say that I want to do an expense report that I know, I went on a trip recently and I want to share that with others. I can actually choose to drag and drop that information directly into my OneDrive for Business site. I don't necessarily want everyone to see what's on that expense report though. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually bring it into the SharePoint environment and just bring it into the top level rather than that shared site. Let me go ahead and drag that in there. And what you'll see is when I drag a piece of content in and drop it, it actually begins to upload that information immediately. And you can tell if you look closely, and this might require some sharp vision, it actually says that this particular report was modified a few seconds ago. So in real time, it's as easy as dragging and dropping from an existing folder into your OneDrive for Business site to be able to get access to it. Now, I'm going to back up a bit and show you what my regular desktop looks like, because not all of you might be used to using SharePoint for that. Some of you might actually want to use a regular file and folder perspective. So give you a second to look at my desktop. I've got a lot of real estate here, but the important perspective is I've got a location right here, which is just a folder. There's nothing special about this particular folder. It's called OneDrive for Business. It's got all of the information that I have within it. When I drag and drop information within that folder, it immediately uploads it to my OneDrive for Business site. So as an end user, I'm not forced to bounce between a lot of different locations. If I'm used to storing stuff within my folder structure, I can just copy information to this particular location and not have to worry, is it going to be something that I need to learn about. Let's use an example here. I've got a Word document over here. I'm going to go ahead and say that this is a personal Word document. I'm going to drag this and just drop it into my site right there. Couldn't be easier. As soon as I drag and drop that document into the actual location, it immediately changes the icon to indicate that it's being backed up with a green check mark. So I don't have to change the way that I use my actual programs. I can continue to do everything the way that I want to. If I want to gain some of those additional features that are only capable within SharePoint, I can go through and use SharePoint for that. But if I'm used to using folders and the like, I can just do it that way. So let me go ahead and I'm going to bring it back down to my my smaller screen so you guys aren't overloaded with a huge amount of content here. So going back to my OneDrive location, within the OneDrive interface, you can see it's got a quick update on the things that I've done. It says that I've uploaded one file. I can actually go in here and just by looking at the icons themselves tell 3 of these files are locked. So that means I'm not actually sharing it with anyone. They're personal to me. This third folder has a symbol of a couple of people. That indicates it's shared with some individuals. So when I go into this particular folder, you can tell the sharing says that it's shared with multiple peoples. If I want to, multiple people, that is rather, if I want to, I can actually choose to click on this ellipsis here, and it'll actually give me a quick preview of what's in that particular document. So rather than having to open up PowerPoint and drill into it, I can very quickly flip through what those decks are within it and see, oh, this is the SharePoint presentation that I'm giving right now. You know, it's something that I can share with others. If I want to give that to other people, let's think about how we would do that in a traditional file server environment. I might email someone. I might actually direct them to go to a specific file server location. With SharePoint, it's much, much easier. Simply by clicking on this link, I can actually cut and paste this link and send it to others. I can say, hey, if you need to get access to this, just go to this site. You'll be able to instantly open it. And when I need to determine who has access to that, that's easy as well. It says shared with lots of people. I can actually select the shared with lots of people link. And this is the link that shows me all of the people that have access to this particular document. And I can go through and be very granular with those levels of access. Julian, for instance, says he can edit, but I can actually change that to say he can only view it. Or I could pull that sharing back altogether by saying stop sharing. So it makes it very easy for me to go through and actually choose what level of sharing or content I want to do for each of the individuals who have access to this document. I can also, if I want to, add additional people simply by typing their names in the Invite People section. So if I go in here and I want to say invite Alan Steiner, I'll start to type in Alan's name. You'll notice as soon as I begin to type that, it actually suggests, hey, do you want to suggest Alan Steiner, the marketing director? I can select that. It instantly gives him the ability to connect in. I can choose the level of access. I'm going to give him view-only access. And then I can write him a quick message that says, Alan, can you take a look at this? You'll notice right here at the bottom there's a requirement that says require sign-in. It's a checkbox, and you can choose to enable it or not enable it. And this goes back to that idea of personal productivity versus shared collaboration settings. If I want to, I can require every single person that accesses this particular document to sign into my SharePoint site using whatever identity mechanism that I've set up before. That could be a Microsoft account, that could be an Office 365 account, you name it. But there are some scenarios where I might not want people to have to sign in. Let's say I've got a PDF or a web page that in reality I just want it to be disseminated as far and wide as possible. I could actually choose to uncheck this require sign-in and actually give people the ability to have an anonymous link that they share with others to be able to go in and get access to that particular bit of information. So it's really my choice to be able to do that. And as a SharePoint administrator, you can choose to enable that for your organization or to disable it if you're concerned from a security perspective. So it really allows you to be very granular with those settings. If I want to, I can even go into the options and choose to send an email invitation as well. So rather than relying upon SharePoint, it'll actually go ahead and send an email to Alan saying, hey, go ahead and take a look at this. And I can click share there, and we'll immediately send that off over to Alan. The great news about that is that it's not something that requires a lot of training. It's not something that requires a lot of management overhead. It's something that's quite easy for you to use to be able to gain access to those particular documents within the system. The final point I'd like to make about personal productivity is the ability of SharePoint to surface up the information that's there when I need it and to hide it when I don't need it. So one of the nice things about SharePoint is it's very easy for me to go through and see the information that I have within my OneDrive for Business site. There's not a lot of information that I need to find that's not instantly available to me. I can see on the left-hand side I've got some recent documents. If I were to log into this SharePoint site, it would say, hey, you need to connect to, perhaps this PowerPoint document or this Word document that you opened quite recently. They're right there for me. If I want to use what's known as Office on Demand, I can click that link and actually get a full-featured copy of Office, only temporarily for any machine that I'm on. So if I'm at a friend's house, let's say, and I need to make some changes to a Word document, rather than having to log in and install some piece of software on my friend's machine that would then have to go through a lengthy install process, I can simply click Use Office on Demand, and that will give me a temporary copy of Office for the time that I'm working on my friend's machine. As soon as I log off, that copy of Office disappears. So I don't have to worry that I've lost any access to Office or that I've designated a license for my friend. I can simply use it from whatever location I'm in to being able to make those changes. We'll see when we go into the collaboration section that those Office products have a much richer capability for their online versions as well too. So I don't necessarily even need to use a regular Office application to make simple changes. I can simply go in and use Office Online to do those. In terms of the information that's surfaced within here, you notice this is pretty simple. I've also got the ability to actually drill down a little more granularly into what SharePoint is doing. And you'll notice at the top here when I selected Library or I select the Files link, it actually gives me a lot more options for what to do than I would have otherwise. So if I'm trying to make new folders or to build some alerts to say, hey, if someone drops a document in here, I can do that through this setting. I can actually go through and export some of this information into Excel or actually change the permissions for this specific library. So if I need to make it more, if I need to go more into depth into the SharePoint interface, all of that information is simply contained within that top level folder view. And if I want to, I can click Browse and hide it. So most of the time that information is hidden from me, but if I need to go into depth, I can go into depth within that environment. So it makes it fairly easy to allow people who are power users to go in and make detailed changes, while the rest of us will probably never need to go into those top libraries. So these are all very powerful features for someone who's working by themselves. But what about if you're working in a team? Let's switch back and look at the benefits of using the rich collaboration features within the environment. So when we talk about collaboration, typically what we mean are you're working in a group with other individuals trying to make changes to a process. And SharePoint helps you in a number of ways to make that much more streamlined. One of the first ways that it makes it easier to use is that it has very simple document workflows. If you're working on a team of 5 people and someone needs to approve a particular work product before it goes out, it's very easy to add that workflow into SharePoint and say, hey, this document is pending review, and now that Reed or Alan or someone else has approved it, it's approved to go to a client. It's quite easy to do that. It's also easy. We've all worked on teams where it can be challenging to keep our personal and work emails distinct from the email that's going through for a particular project. In the latest version of SharePoint, there's the idea of a site mailbox, which is just like a regular email mailbox, except it's only for that particular project. So in this example, they've got an investor relations project that they're working on. They've added a site mailbox, so anyone who wants to email that entire team of individuals can simply send an email to the investor relations email address, and it will actually show up within that SharePoint library. So without having another place for people to go, it makes it very easy for everyone on the team to be read into that particular project. And thinking myself about that, we've all been in situations where we've been on a team of 5 or 6 people and a new person has been added to the group. And one of the big challenges of that particular situation is that the new person doesn't have the historical knowledge to be able to get up to speed terribly quickly. All of the emails are in 5 or 6 different email boxes. They can't just simply go back a month in time and surface all of those at once. The nice thing about a site mailbox is that all of that email is contained in one email box. Everyone has access to it, but if you bring a new person on, they can go through the last week or 2 weeks very quickly to see the information that's contained within there. They also have the ability to go through all the documents that are contained within there without having to flip between different tools for using that. If you do have Office Pro Plus installed on your machine, Outlook 2013 actually mixes these two together as well. I know a lot of organizations that have very heavy Outlook users and have used SharePoint in the past fairly lightly. And the nice thing about site mailboxes is with a site mailbox, I can actually integrate both the mail as well as the documents into one location within Outlook as well. So even if I just use Outlook, I can have that site mailbox pointed to a SharePoint backend for document storage to allow me to use the tool of choice. And this is really one of the best stories that Microsoft has out there. If I'm really into SharePoint, I can do almost everything within SharePoint. If I'm really into Outlook, I can do almost everything I need to within Outlook. It's really my personal preference for the tools that I want to use to gain the most productivity. We mentioned earlier being able to share information with other people. I showed you how you could actually connect in and choose to add additional people into specific documents. You can do that with folders as well. It's a built-in functionality within it. And you can share those with people outside your organization as well. We've seen a lot of groups that we've worked with where it's great that you can share stuff internally, but that seems like something that they can do right now. But external parties, that's a bigger lift when they're trying to allow people to log in from a partner or a vendor or a trusted advisor. Being able to do this with SharePoint is very easy, and it makes it simple to set up those permissions to reflect what you want things to do. If you're working in a team of 5 or 6 people, probably you have a lot of projects in the mix, and SharePoint makes that easy as well. One of the great things about SharePoint from a project perspective in the latest version is that you can very easily spin up sites that detail a list of tasks all the way through to a fully featured project online site. It's really up to you to decide what level of effort you want to do to contribute. From a management perspective, it's always great to be able to see into detailed instructions of how a project is going. From an end user perspective, sometimes project can be a little bit more than you need. If you're just trying to make a list of tasks for what to do, let's say for a project that's only due in 3 days, you may not need all of the project online capabilities to do that. You might just want to build a simple task list within SharePoint. And SharePoint allows you to scale up or down as necessary. One of the things that we found that a lot of organizations like to do is to create what's known as an ideation site. It's actually just a series of SharePoint lists where people contribute good ideas for the company. And then if any of the ideas turn out to be an idea that senior management wants to act on, they can simply go into the SharePoint list, select those ideas that they feel have merit, and actually promote them to a full-blown Microsoft project to begin executing on. So that's one of the better features capable within it. Of course, with any project-based task, you can obviously use shared calendars, you can use timelines, you can actually show what those look like for an executive to be able to see without having to require them to install project. They can simply go into a SharePoint site and see at a glance how well things are going and whether things are on track or not. That extends back to personal productivity as well. In this version of SharePoint, it actually integrates all of the different task lists across multiple different areas to allow you to really choose to use one pane of glass to see what you need to do. I know many people who use Outlook and use tasks within Outlook. I know lots of people who use SharePoint to be able to build lists within there of tasks and to-do lists. And I know lots of people who use Project to align larger project tasks. The great thing about SharePoint Online is that it can pull from both Outlook and Project and surface all that information within one common platform to allow you to really get a good feel for what you need to be doing at any given moment, rather than having to do all of the tasks from all of those different individuals. And it's a strong advantage, because before, if you're telling your staff that they need to go into Microsoft Project or they need to go into SharePoint, they may be used to using the tasks within the Outlook environment, and before there wasn't a lot of tasks that you could do to really get those to come together. In the latest version of SharePoint, by integrating all of those different components together, it makes it very easy to ensure that you can actually have everything working in a seamless environment without having people having to know, where are all these tasks? Are they in Outlook or SharePoint or Project? And you can see that here. Makes it very easy. So let's go ahead and we're going to dive right into the collaboration demo. There's going to be a lot of work in this page, part of the task. So let me go ahead and share this out so you guys can see what it looks like. So I'm starting at the top with a sample SharePoint site. This is actually customized to look like a fictional company called Contoso. This is still part of the same underlying SharePoint site that I went to earlier with my site. So it's still there. One of the things that I might do from a collaboration perspective is start to go through and actually work on a team together. You'll notice I've got a bunch of account teams. I'm going to select Eurasia because I'm going to be working within that account team here. All of this functionality is stuff that's very easy to light up and turn on. You notice I have a number of different account teams here. In this case, Karen is actually going to be working with Northwind Traders. So I'm going to go ahead and go into that particular site. So this is a stereotypical site about a particular account team. This is for the Northwind Traders group. They work with Contoso on a regular basis. So I'm, as Karen Berg, I'm fictionally helping this group out. When I look through this particular account site, I can see a lot of information, some of it from other people within the organization who are talking about the changes that are going on at Northwind right now. You can see that one of the people actually had to leave early, and Karen Berg is going to be taking over that account. So I'm actually going to have to go through and get some information about this particular account to being able to make changes to it. And you'll see on the left, quick access toolbar, I've got a number of different areas that I can leverage to start diving in and getting information about the particular items of use to me regarding Northwind Traders. So let me go ahead and I'll show that site mailbox first. You can see right out of the gate I've got a little note here that says mailbox. If I select this mailbox, this will actually bring me into Outlook web app, but it's not bringing me in as myself. This is actually an email box purely dedicated to Northwind Traders. Any person outside the organization, any person inside the organization can send an email and go to Northwind Traders. And if I go into here, I can actually choose to send a message myself and choose to have it come from Northwind Traders. So when I choose to do this, any person that receives this message will now receive it from Northwind Traders and be able to get information on it. And here at this point, I would just use my regular Outlook skills to be able to send information to people within the organization. I'll say here, Alan, can you give me a hand? NT. So again, you're not having to learn a new system. You're not having to do something to change how you normally do items. If I want to be able to read information or go through here, it's quite simple for me to be able to do that. And if I want to go back to the mailbox, I can go back to the top level with only a click away without having to change out of SharePoint. So I can stay within that web interface for most of the stuff that I do here. I can access mail. I can go ahead and access documents. Let's look at what the documents share looks like when I go to that. So you'll see here I've got a list of documents. As before, if I choose to actually open up, I can actually get previews of information on any of these tasks that have a common Word item. I've got an Excel list here with a list of tasks. That's not what I'm looking for. I remember I was looking for something around the meeting minutes. I'll hover over here. Immediately Word Online pops up. This looks like the sort of document I want to be editing. Makes it really easy to see without, again, having to open these up or browse through different items, which particular document I want to work on. So in this case, I've got a Word document that I want to start working on. I'm going to go ahead and hit edit from here. Again, not a whole lot that I need to do to be able to do this. I'll actually bring this up. If I want to, rather than bringing up Word, the application, I can also choose just to edit it by clicking directly into it and going in through Word Online. So it's really my choice for what level that I want to use. If I want to use the traditional Word application, I can certainly do that. But if I also want to just use a quick series of edits without having the application installed, I can also just select the name of the document and begin editing it. You notice here it gives me that option, edit it in Word or edit it in Word Online. So I can actually come in and choose to say edit in Word Online, and it'll actually fire up the Office Online product. And you'll notice when I start, working in here, that as soon as I begin to work, you'll see that it actually lets me know if other people are working as well. You can see in this bottom left-hand corner, there's a little green symbol that says Julian Isla. He's actually working on the document in real time, and as he types stuff, I'm not having to wait or to save or to make changes to the document. I can immediately begin making changes without having to worry, is he going to overwrite what I'm doing, because it's in real time.
Reed, we have a question. Is preview available for non-Microsoft documents?
Yeah, so the preview is designed around the Microsoft stack of documents, primarily because the Office Online products are what are used to do that preview. So if you have documents that are of a different format, it's not going to work as well as ones that are in Word, Excel, or PowerPoint. But that's a good question, and certainly SharePoint does have the capability of surfacing and storing information that's not an Office document. I'll use a PDF as an example. Lots of people have PDFs on their regular items. Word now has the ability to natively edit a PDF. So it's often easier to open that PDF up within Word and save it as a Word document than to keep it as a traditional PDF. So your other question about being able to use, to have multiple people editing the document in multiple formats. If one person opens it up in the traditional version of Word and another two open up in Word Online, the only difference from a experience perspective is that when you're in the online version, I'm not having to wait to see changes that are being made within my environment. Those changes are occurring in real time. I can see Julian typed in some gobbledygook here in real time. I'm not having to commit any changes. If I'm using the Word application, it behaves a little differently when people are making changes. It actually will lock out portions of the text and require me to save the document to commit my changes and unlock the changes made by other people. Other than that change in how the saving works, it's exactly the same. So there isn't any difference. I could have 3 people in the online version and 3 people in the full version of Word, all working at the same time simultaneously, making edits to a single document. And that ability to scale up and down is really just the ability to break things into their individual components. Excel can go down to the cell level, so if it's only locking one cell at a time. Word will typically go to the sentence level, so if I'm working on this sentence, it's not going to allow me to make a change to the sentence below or to that specific sentence if I'm using the Word application. PowerPoint goes down to the object level, so if someone's in one object, it's not going to let you overwrite that single object. So each of them do have different interfaces for doing it, but you can certainly mix and match. And what we've seen over the past 6 to 12 months is that Microsoft has made a huge investment in making sure that the Office Online products are very robust and capable of being used in lieu of the actual Office suite. You'll notice here it surfaces up that Julian is also editing. I can see that at a glance without having to go anywhere. As multiple people come in, you'll see them show up with additional flags, allowing me to get information about who's in there and what they're doing. It is if I'll be honest, if I click open in Word, I will get additional features that I don't have within the online version. And you can see as you go through what the online version gives you the capabilities of. This is not the full version of what's capable within the regular Word application, but there are a lot of features within here, and they've significantly been improving every single month. So one thing that I know is that in 2 months from now, there will be even more features replicated from the regular version of Word into the online version, which is great, because if you're trying to do something quickly, you don't want to think, do I have a copy of Word installed on my particular desktop to using that? Those documents here also retain the same ability to be able to drag and drop and make changes to them. I'm not having to learn a new interface, and I've still got that window to be able to go in and do what a power user might do on that side of the coin. One of the areas that I didn't mention before, but that's important, is that there is a link up here that says sync in the upper right-hand corner. That sync link essentially makes a copy of the entire document library, much like my OneDrive for Business site, and actually brings that down. It stores it within the same OneDrive framework, but I can take any of those SharePoint document libraries that I want to work on offline and actually synchronize them so that a copy of them is living on my laptop or my Surface as I go on a trip. So it makes it very easy. We all remember the days where if someone was going to be going on a long trip, they'd have to select the specific files that they wanted, and they'd have to endure this fairly painful process when they came back into the office of merging those changes back into making it a very seamless experience. These days, if I click sync, that will copy all of the files within this particular folder into one folder on my machine. I can make any changes that I want to, and as soon as I get connectivity again, it'll seamlessly merge those back into the documents themselves. I noticed another question about changing the design of the page itself. You certainly do have the ability to change some aspects of the SharePoint design. Some of those are done out of the box, and we'll go over those in the build section, and some of those require custom coding. So the more simpler stuff of the images, the fonts, the logos, colors, and the like, those can be done without having to do a whole lot of coding. If you start to get into very specific items, specific words on the page, you might need to actually do some custom coding to rechange that. And I'll cover some of that in the build section as well. So from a task perspective, I'm going to go ahead and click into my tasks here. It's going to fire up Excel Online. I mentioned that you can use Office to actually make projects quite easily. And I'm going to show you an example of that. I'm going to actually go ahead and say I'm going to edit this Excel document. I'm going to choose to select all of these items right here. Just a simple task list. And you can imagine doing this on any particular site at any time. So I'm going to go back to my top level site and show you how easy it is to actually add components to it. So right now I've got a list of documents, a mailbox, I've got some reporting in it. I'm going to go ahead and add a new app. I can do that by simply selecting the gear and saying to add an app. SharePoint apps are common tools that you use to give more functionality to the existing SharePoint sites. So in this case, it's saying, hey, would you like to add a quick announcement or perhaps a wiki? I've also got a task list, so I'm going to go ahead and add a series of tasks into here. It'll ask me for a name. I'll say task list 1. Go ahead and create that. So on the back end, it's going to take that particular application and add it into the site, and you can see it now says task list 1 is a list of the currently installed apps. I've also got it here on my recent list. If I want to, I can edit these links in real time to prefer moving that up. So in this case, I might say, hey, I want to, just go ahead and click into my task list 1. And this is a common SharePoint task list. I've got a timeline at the top to show me where I am from a calendar perspective. And I've got a list right here. I'm going to go ahead and say edit. Great. No problem there. And I'm actually going to just cut and paste that task list into the tasks. You'll notice it says that it's building this up. and as it builds up, it's actually putting in the names of the staff that had already been assigned in that task list. So without having to do any sort of configuration, just by cutting and pasting from an Excel list, I was able to quickly move in and give these assignments to different people within the organization. I can also be very specific. I can change who this particular task is given to. Instead of Karen, I'm going to go ahead and give it to Julian. And if I want to, much like Excel, I can actually come in here and just drag and drop that to give him to multiple items. So it makes it very easy to go ahead and make those sort of task changes without needing an additional infrastructure to make it possible. If I want to, I can go ahead and select any particular tasks. And if I choose to, I can actually say to add these to a timeline. So I've got a timeline above. It'll actually start putting these items in here. And you see, without making too many changes, I've got a self-assessment on the 15th. I've got a business vision on the item here. And if I want to, I can always choose to add additional components to that timeline. Again, I haven't had to do any major changes to this item. It says right out of the box, how old is this? It's 104 days old. I can send people to that. I can actually change how it looks. I can move the date if I want to. I can even move it to a date closer to today. It's really my choice to being able to do that. So it makes it very easy when you have these sorts of task lists to give people an idea for what they need to do without having them have to take on an entirely new project application to do this. If I want to, of course, I could promote this list of tasks. I don't necessarily have to go in here and do this through the SharePoint interface. I could, of course, say, hey, this task is complete, this one is complete. It's very simple for people to understand. Checking that box marks them as complete. But if I want to, I could go in here and actually choose to change this list and actually choose to open it with Microsoft Project. So if this list gets overwhelmingly large, if I'm making a lot of subtasks and so forth, I can eventually bring this into Microsoft Project to do the types of project management that I might want to do. So let's flip back to the third core of the SharePoint experience, which is discovery. It's great that you can build projects and you can build shared calendars and contacts and the like. But what are the capabilities that you need to do in your office on a regular basis that are tough for you to do? One of those big ones is actually discovery. So in SharePoint, you can actually use it to gain information about where not only documents are stored, but what type of people are in your organization. And we see lots of organizations where they know the answer is somewhere. It's either buried in a Word document or a PowerPoint deck, or perhaps in someone's head. But the main problem is actually figuring out who worked on what document most recently to be able to give their area of expertise back to you as a fellow employee. And SharePoint makes that quite easy and natural. One of the other great features of SharePoint, in addition to searching for specific people who have information, is to be very granular in the filters. You can filter by types of document. You can filter by keywords and authors. It really gives you a huge amount of capabilities to being able to find exactly what you want when you're within the SharePoint environment. So let's go ahead and show that off. I'm going to go ahead and flip back to my SharePoint instance. So let's go ahead and go up to the top level of Contoso. So I'm, again, going back to that top intranet portal site to be able to get information, because this might be where I search for information. You notice they've got a couple of different areas that I can search on. I'm going to choose to search at this top level for marketing. Now you'll notice when I search for marketing, it doesn't actually narrow it down by a particular topic or person right out of the gate. Here on the left-hand side, it says, hey, are you looking for a news feed? Are you looking for a PDF? Are you looking for a SharePoint site? And I can choose to hover over any of these websites. So from a preview perspective, in addition to previewing content of actual documents, it'll also give me a rich preview of these specific web pages, because I might be trying to go to a specific web page to get information about it. And I can see by clicking in there that there's a lot of information that's useful for me. But what I was specifically looking for is a person who knows a lot about marketing. Notice here on the left-hand side it has the author of some of those contents, so I could look for these particular authors perhaps. Or I could even filter it by the particular date. If I'm looking for someone who's been contributing quite recently, I can filter it so it doesn't include items from over a year old. I've also made some preference from a language perspective to look for things within English, but I can very easily choose to strip this down and say, marketing's great, but I'm looking for a person. I'm not looking for a SharePoint site. I'm not looking for a PowerPoint deck. I'm looking for a specific person. And as soon as I change it to search for people rather than content in the form of a PowerPoint or a Word document, it's very easy for me to go into these specific individuals, hover over them, and get that preview for what they've been working on. So I can see Alan Steiner was working on this Word document. I can check his skills. You know, he has some skills for demographics in India. If I look at Kelly Kraut, I can see she's good at competitive analysis. She's great at making PowerPoint, and I can see she built a number of documents about specs for some of the items. It just makes it much easier to be able to get that information and find the specific person that I need to, whereas before I might have to ask a huge amount of people for information about it. Now I can find that very easily at the touch of a button. And you'll notice here on the left-hand side, I can even search by marketing title or perhaps keywords. So I could look for brand management as a keyword, and that would eliminate all the people who don't have brand management as one of those skills, which means, again, I can much more narrowly tailor the search of individuals that I'm looking for to be able to get that information right out of the box. So this discovery level is great. I'm not having to make a lot of changes. It's actually pulling that from my own site where I've contributed the information, which means that if I write blog entries or I put more content in about myself, I just become much more useful to the organization as a whole. Let's flip over to the final pillar of SharePoint, which is actually the build pillar. And that's something that I think is known to a few people, but frequently thought of as a fairly large lift. One of the great things about SharePoint is it's a platform. You can build lots of stuff within SharePoint. You can build complex workflows, you can build websites, you can build everything under the sun. And many people feel like they have to get a consultant to come in to enable some of those scenarios. And the answer is you don't need to. If you need to build a simple site, it's quite easy for you to do that yourself. So in a few clicks, you can actually choose to start up a particular site, narrowly targeted towards what you want it to do, and allow you to start taking action on that with coworkers at your organization. And it just doesn't end at those team sites. You can also build very robust external sites without having to do a huge amount of coding to be able to provide access not only to people inside your organization, but also external parties who might want to consume content from you. So what does that look like? Let's go ahead and show off the capabilities there. So I've gone back to my personal site. This is Karen Berg's site. You can tell, got her picture up there. You can see that I've got a couple of sites that I'm following. I've got my Contoso intranet site. I'm looking at a benefit site. But let's say that I actually want to start a new project and build that myself. All I have to do is click this new site button. When I do that, that actually brings up a start a new site logo. Here I'm going to say, we're going to call it Project Acme. Go ahead and create that. It begins the process of provisioning the site. Again, I haven't had to go to my IT organization. I've just set up those rights so that I can do that myself. On the back end, it's actually doing that site provisioning and giving me the common tasks that I might need to be able to take action moving forward. It's important to note that if you're spinning up sites frequently of a certain type or template, you might want to automate that process so that people get a similar look and feel for all the sites. So here in Project Acme, it says get started with your site. And I've got some common tasks that I might want to be working on. I could share the site with multiple people, both internally and externally. Maybe I'm interested in a task and timeline view that that thing I showed you earlier where you're pasting tasks and keeping track of how you're working on a project. It's very easy to add that app as well. If I want to, I can actually change the look and theming of the site as well to be more granular and more targeted towards the way that I want it to come across to people. I can also, I mentioned that site mailbox, I can add email to a website simply by clicking this particular link. Let me go ahead and show you what the branding capabilities of building a site out of the box allow me to do. Lets me change the title, I've got a description, I've got a logo, and I've got a URL. These are pretty simple stuff. Again, I wouldn't need to go to an IT person to go in here to say, hey, this site is dedicated to Acme. Very easy to make those changes. You know, the more I can do myself, the better. If I look at the styles, these go a little bit more in depth for what those capabilities are. So you'll notice I get some theming styles that are contained out of the box. In this case, I'm going to choose to do the green theme for Project Acme. And it's going to ask me to do a couple of tasks that it thinks might be useful for me to being able to make the site look how I might want it to look. So in this case, I've got the ability to drag and drop an image for the background. I've got some colors, layout, fonts, and the like. I can choose to just drag and drop a particular piece of content into the image. I've got a nice snowy wonderland look here. I'm going to keep the colors and site layouts and the like. I can select try it out. And the great thing about this is it lets me see what it's going to look like before it ends up implementing that for others. So without having to make a whole bunch of code changes, I as a site admin can build that out relatively quickly and see if it matches what I'd like it to look like. And if it doesn't, you know, back up. And you can see I've got that background of a tree in a snowy landscape. I've got the colors that I want. I can say yes, keep it. And I'm actually now the site administrator of this Project Acme site. So being able to go in and make those changes very quickly without having to call up a code person, you know, let's say I've finished with all of these cool first steps, I can remove that very easily. As soon as I click remove it, it goes back to what I want it to look like. I can choose to edit that as I see fit without having to get IT involved. So it makes it a very easy process to get going and have people have some level of ownership. If they need to get more in-depth, as I mentioned, I can come in here and change some more in-depth site settings or go in and make some more detailed changes with a program like SharePoint Designer. But even with SharePoint Designer, I'm still not making code changes per se. So 90% of the changes that I might make to this site for how it looks, the apps that are installed, the capabilities of it, are ones I can do without getting a developer involved, which means it's easier for you as an organization to take advantage of those sites. So all of this exists to make sure that SharePoint is a very robust platform to allowing people to be more productive, not only for themselves, but also for all the other members around it. It's something that I feel makes a big difference. But let's talk about people outside the organization. Frequently, people may want to purchase or build content for people who aren't necessarily in your organization. And that's where the external SharePoint sites come up. So this is an external SharePoint site. This is a regular website built completely within SharePoint. It's using all the basic features. It's got a web address. It's got a news feed. It's got different components for, you know, information about the company itself. All of this is contained within a SharePoint site. So I know a lot of people think to themselves, hey, I'm going to build a website, you know, but SharePoint is for storing Word documents or PowerPoint documents. But all of this is capable from the SharePoint platform. Without a lot of customization, without a lot of custom development, these are just web parts added into the section. So if you're thinking about building a new website and you want it to be on a platform that allows you to do that level of configuration and customization, you can continue to use SharePoint to do that without having to bring on you know, additional developers to give you, you know, specific items about the environment. So one of the things that I constantly talk to customers about is, well, if you already own SharePoint Online, for instance, you already have the capability of going in here and making these changes within the environment. You don't have to go back and host a second website. You could do that yourself. So we compare that internal website to, let's say, the top-level Contoso site. Both of those sites are sites that are relatively easy for people to understand and use. I'm not having to think, is this particular site a site that is complex to use? But they both are ones that, at the end of the day, don't require a huge amount of custom development to make sure that it works. If I'm looking at my default Contoso site or I'm looking at the external site, these are both sites that, again, I'm not having to say, hey, what's coming, does this look like a standard SharePoint site? As an end user, I might just think that this is the regular custom developed site that individuals have access to. So we're happy to help your organization move towards having something that is much more, I would say, customer friendly like this, or to being able to bring on a more internally facing site, such as this custom Project Acme site for you. And it's really your choice to moving between the two. I did want to end with enough time for you guys to ask any remaining questions and answer any things that I had not answered before. So, Christine, do we have any questions so far?
It looks like we're getting a couple coming through.
Okay. So I think we covered the redesign aspect of what that would look like. In terms of the synchronization, one of the things that Microsoft has done recently is actually rename their SkyDrive product to be OneDrive and OneDrive for Business. So if you are seeing things that are related to SkyDrive Pro, that's what's being called OneDrive for Business now, moving forward. And you can choose to synchronize personal files or corporate files on any of those. If you're looking to pull data that's already contained within SharePoint itself, let's say a task list or a series of Word documents or the like, and you want to pull that into somewhere else, there are some connectors that you can use to pull that data from one location to another. That typically does involve a little bit amount of custom development, so it's not something out of the box that I would suggest your staff be performing. But as long as it is contained within a location that the permissions are set up properly, there are ways to carry that information from one site to the other. Other questions that we have in the final couple minutes? So SharePoint was built out of the box to use things like InfoPath forms. There's a specific type of document library to essentially take your existing forms, whether they're paper or digital, and use it as a repository for that. Microsoft has said that in the next version of Office that's coming out, they're going to be replacing InfoPath with a new product. One of the reasons that they're looking to do that, and what we've heard from customers, is that everyone's really excited to fill out forms, but they're almost more excited to fill out documents where they can co-author and work on documents at the same time. And although you can co-author in Word, Excel, and PowerPoint, those forms typically don't allow you in the current model to be able to do that. So we're looking to see some significant improvements to how InfoPath works with a new product that's coming out over the next, I'd say, 6 to 9 months. But for now, yes, you can certainly take InfoPath and drop forms into a SharePoint forms library and use it from there. So in terms of folders, SharePoint has a love-hate relationship with folders. If you want to use it as a one-to-one ratio, representation of your file server, you certainly can build up a large amount of folders. It is, generically easier to do that within Explorer view, but because SharePoint maps to Explorer fairly easily within any of these particular locations, if I'm choosing to open up a particular document library, I can actually choose to make that document library exposed through Explorer. What we found is that the rich capabilities of SharePoint are best leveraged when you don't have a very in-depth folder structure. Many of our customers have organized around that method, and I'll use this as an example. Right now I can see it at a glance. When I hover over this Excel item, I can see, hey, here's the Excel contained within it. If I choose to search, I can search for that information. if I have these folders that are sitting here, I can't do the same thing. I can't actually hover over them and see the information within the folders. I actually have to drill down into the folder itself, and then from within the folder, do that actual previewing of the documents. And so having them in folders is useful if you're not doing large amounts of searching and you're not using preview. But for both of those two features, SharePoint makes it a lot easier to keep it in a flat folder structure and actually search on the metadata that's contained within it, and to actually browse through looking at the preview of it rather than having them nested within a number of different folders. So I would say, although you can mirror it one-to-one, it's more efficient to do it by actually having it within a flatter structure. From a site collection perspective, you do have the ability to move some types of content up and down within the SharePoint environment. We typically use site collections as the boundary for security. So if you want to have different people accessing and not be able to traverse across it, we would set up different site collections within that. Christina, I know we're at time right now. I'm happy to answer any of the questions at the conclusion offline after the webinar concludes. But I want to thank everybody for their time and would love to chat with all of you more about your specific needs.
Yep, I'm going to stop the recording now, Reeve.
Okay.